And as I mentioned before the break, we have a guest joining us at this time. It's Clare Lopez. And I didn't get to give a good enough introduction, so I'm going to quickly do that now. And we have her on the line, but she is the Vice President for Research and Analysis at the Center for Security Policy. But she's a nationwide sought-after expert relating to Iran, the Middle East, national security, and Israel. She just is, if I read this whole resume, then we won't have any time to talk to her, but she's an extraordinary, we're very honored to have her join us, extraordinary expert. She's been on the show numerous times, and she's actually was named, I'm going to mention one thing. In 2012, she was named as a member of the Congressional Task Force on National and Homeland Security. I mean, she just is a great expert. So I want her to join us to talk about what you may have been seeing in the news related to Israel and Iran. So, hi, Clare.
Hi, Debbie. It's great to be with you again.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining me. Well, I want to just jump right in and talk about Israel to start with. The first thing on Israel, I mentioned to you, I think when I emailed you a few weeks ago, I ran across a story that in Israel, the IDF had uncovered a massive plot by Hamas, and this was uncovered in Judea or in Samaria, a massive plot by Hamas to engage in an extraordinary large attack on numerous locations throughout Israel. And because it was uncovered by the Israelis, by the IDF, they were able to stop it and to remove the weapons. But the first thing I was going to comment was, I did not even see that in American media. Maybe you did.
No, you're right, Debbie. This does not get anywhere near the attention it deserves in the U.S. media. This is a story that broke, certainly in the Israeli media, about a month ago, middle of June. And what caught my attention as I looked at this, of course, not just that the Israeli security services were able to break up this plot before anything came to fruition from it. They were planning suicide bombings, shooting attacks, and so forth all over Israel, including Jerusalem, Tel Aviv, and many more places. But what struck me is we're talking about a Hamas presence in Samaria, well, Judea and Samaria. And typically, we have thought of those areas as being under the authority of the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas, Abu Mazen. But that Hamas is now apparently able to operate with this level of impunity in that area says to me that Abbas is definitely losing his grip. We know that he has been suffering from health problems lately. He has never identified and named a successor, but I think he's losing his grip, and that is how Hamas is able to get, I think, this kind of a foothold on what many people think of as the West Bank.
Yeah, and actually I was going to mention that there are just so many ways to go with this, but yes, for one thing is, I know you've been to Israel many times, we have too. We use the expression when my husband's business partners, family members, some of them live in Judea and Samaria. That is an area that the people who are more friendly to Palestinians want to refer to as the West Bank. And so it has this ominous tone of the occupied. It's not fair Israelis have this, but this is really an area where there are many Israeli families and communities who are, and where there also are Palestinians living in within those communities. And one thing I noticed that the Prime Minister Netanyahu said was, Hamas terror plot being uncovered in this area shows that Israel must continue to control Judea and Samaria. That's got to be right?
Well, yes. I mean, certainly in terms of security. Now, people may know the entire area of Judea and Samaria is divvied up into what they call areas A and B and C. Areas A mean all those parts that are completely under the control of the Palestinian Authority, well, such as it is, right? Areas B are those places where there is shared control over the areas in that part of the map. And then Area C are those areas completely under the authority of Israel. So this particular plot, though, apparently was headquartered in Nablus,
Yeah.
Nablus is totally Palestinian Authority controlled, or supposedly. But again, it goes back to what I'm saying. Either the PA and Hamas are working together more closely than perhaps we'd thought, or the Palestinian Authority and Mahmoud Abbas are losing control, and Hamas is gaining control and influence in these areas.
Neither one of them are very good news for Israel, actually, but yes.
No.
Yeah. Okay. Also, it was interesting because you were talking about, I mean, we're going to jump onto in a moment what's going on within Iran, but isn't Hamas one of the groups that the Iranians tend to fund? Isn't that right?
Yes. Hamas and the Iranians have had an on-again, off-again relationship over the years. Currently, it's back on again, apparently. And we should really mention right now that the most important threat facing Israel at the moment and for the last several days has been a real upturn in the
Gaza?
assault of rockets and missiles being fired into civilian areas of Israel out of Gaza. Over 200 just in the last 24 hours or so, the news is reporting. Luckily, only 4 Israeli citizens so far, as we know, have been injured. Iron Dome has intercepted something like 30 of these, and the system will let those go that will just land in an open area or field and not harm anyone. But these people are living under constant red alert sirens. Now, I was just in Israel, my most recent trip, just a couple months ago in early May, and we visited areas very close to the Israeli-Gaza border. We were in Sderot for one place, and also in at least one kibbutz in that area nearby the Gaza border. And so these people, when those red alert sirens go off, have something like 15 or maybe 30 seconds to get into a bomb shelter because they don't know where that incoming rocket may land, or if it's going to be, in a field, and or if Iron Dome again will intercept it, which it's been doing a fabulous job of doing and keeping us Israelis safe. But the point I'm making is that they are living under the kind of conditions that no one should be forced to live under. These are jihadist terrorists in Gaza, whether it's Hamas doing this, whether it's Palestinian Islamic Jihad. Both are funded, armed, trained by the jihadist regime in Tehran, in Iran, by the IRGC, Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, and Quds Force, and their intelligence service. And at some point, Israel is simply going to have to take action, use overwhelming force to end this threat once and for all, so that its people may live in peace and quiet.
I couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I was going to segue to. I'm so glad you did. So all we were talking about earlier was this Hamas plot uncovered Judea Samaria, which is east, basically Gaza, where a lot of American media attention came when the U.S. embassy was moved at President Trump's direction in Israel, moved to Jerusalem. At the time that was occurring, and there was a lot of international attention to Jerusalem and Israel because of the move of the embassy. There was quite an uproar with the Gaza border and the Palestinians lobbing rockets and flaming kites and other attacks into Israel. And then when Israel responded, that's what the media picked up. Not that there had been all sorts of attacks from within Gaza, but then when Israel strikes back, then that was being depicted by, oh, there go the Israelis again, picking on the poor Palestinians. I do want to talk a little bit more about what's happening in Gaza and how Israel's responding. But Claire, you were at the opening of the U.S. Embassy, right?
No, not actually.
Oh.
I had to leave this trip one day early to get back home again because my brother was receiving an award at the high school where he teaches, and I really needed to be with him and the family for that. So I left a day early. But in any case...
You're a very nice sister, I must say.
Oh, I wouldn't have missed it for the world. But the thing is also that the invitee list was so small. So, I mean... outside of dignitaries and visiting officials from the United States, other places, all the members of the Knesset could not even get in front of the ceremony. So we would not have been able to be there precisely on the Monday, which was the 14th of May, I think.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in because we've got to go off to a break here. But when you come back, I want to have you tell our listeners what it looked like, even the day before, what the attitude and the feel was in Jerusalem when the embassy moved over to Jerusalem from America. So come right back, folks. America Can We Talk? Clare Lopez. We'll be right back. And welcome back to America Can We Talk? I'm Debbie Georgatos. I'm so happy we still have on the line Clare Lopez. She's an extraordinary expert on national security in the Middle East, Iran, and Israel. And we were talking before the break about Israel. And Israel has been, throughout its entire troubled existence, has had kind of perpetual ongoing danger around it. It's located, obviously, in the Middle East, surrounded by people who aren't always friendly to the idea of Israel. Currently, there is an ongoing just attacks from the Gaza. And I mentioned the kite thing happening. People in Gaza were lighting kites and throwing them over the border into Israel. It would land in fields, burn crops, it burned schools. I mean, it's really been an ongoing attack. And then now there's actually a missile attack. You were describing so there has been, I noticed that Prime Minister Netanyahu has engaged in quite a serious defense on behalf of Israel. He's been is being described as the harshest assault against the Gaza Strip's Hamas rulers since 2014. And it's been an Israeli aerial attack in response to Gaza. So is your sense that the attack or the response by Israel to the attacks from Gaza, is Israel's attack, appropriate level? Is it too much? Is it not enough? What do you think?
There is no other country in the world that would be expected to live under the constant threat and the constant attack that Israel has and does. There's going to come a time when, as the phrase goes, mowing the grass is not going to cut it, so to speak, anymore. The threat out of Gaza is going to have to be dealt with once and for all at some point. The response by the Israelis has been really strong this time, taking out Hamas command and control centers, launch sites. But at some point, it's going to have to deal with it permanently. The problem, of course, is that Islamic doctrine itself commands that Muslims must fight and kill the Jews, must destroy the state of Israel because it is in a place that was once under Islamic control, under the control of Islamic Muslim armies. For that reason and that reason alone, and that the Jews for a very long time were what are called dhimmis, ahadimma, the dhimmi people, conquered people. The doctrine that Hamas follows as the Palestinian branch of the Muslim Brotherhood is that it must fight, and it's in its covenant, it's in the Hamas covenant, that it must fight until it obliterates the state of Israel. So at some point, Israel will have to deal with this, I think, permanently, once and for all. At the moment, though, of course, there are a lot of other things going on. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been speaking both with Russian President Vladimir Putin and also with our President Donald Trump in advance of very important meetings between President Trump and Putin within the 24 hours, less than 24 hours from now in Helsinki, Finland. And that refers a big topic of conversation for those talks will refer to the threat from the northern border, another border from which Israel faces threats, as the Damascus regime of Bashar al-Assad seeks to move ever closer itself or via its proxies, Iranian Shiite proxies like Hezbollah, closer to the Israeli border, and the U.S. Doing everything we can to make sure that doesn't happen and to support and back up Israel.
Okay, back 1 second. You mentioned, I think, before the break that part of what is occurring with the aggression in Gaza against Israel is that there is a sense there is Iranian backing, and that this, in fact, there was an article that was called "The Road to Gaza Runs Through Tehran." Is it really clear that Iran is backing the Gaza violence?
Oh, certainly. Iran has armed, trained, funded Hamas. As I said, the relationship a bit on again, off again, but over the decades, it has fulfilled that role. And now we have reports, much more recent, that Hamas operatives are training under Hezbollah up in Lebanon. So there again, you've got the Iranian proxy Hezbollah that controls Lebanon on Lebanese soil, training Hamas operatives from Gaza, and then they'll go back to Gaza.
I wish so much of what you know would be really, really widely known in America, because I feel very troubled when I ever see stories about Israel. It always seems like Israel, as you've described them, they're surrounded by people who are just not just willing to engage them in battle, but fundamentally committed to the destruction of Israel. Israel acts to defend itself, whether it fights back on Gaza or it takes some action in the Samaria, Judea area, the West Bank. And Israel is always the bad guy. And the idea in the American media and the idea that what they put up with every day, no other country would. I just wish more people knew what you're describing, what Israel has to constantly contemplate. Okay, but I want to hit one other thing too, but there's never enough time, and you're always so full of good information. I want to turn to Iran for a second, which is Iran has, I noticed, and I meant to tell our listeners, you should follow Clare Lopez on Twitter. She is just a fabulous Twitter feed. Her Twitter feed is at Clare, C-L-A-R-E, no I, at C-L-A-R-E, M as in Mary, Lopez, L-O-P-E-Z. Great Twitter feed. I saw you liked a story on there, which is from The Hill, that said, it's titled, Iran is unsteady on the inside. The U.S. should squeeze from the outside. What is that all about?
Yes, exactly. So this is an article that appeared, as I said, just in the Hill just a day or two ago, I guess. And really, what we're looking at inside of Iran, and this article gets to it, is serious instability. And part of it has to do with the economic situation of the Iranian people, which is dire. Some of it that we're watching, for example, in the southwestern part of Iran, in the Arab province of Khuzestan, is environmental, the destruction of the environment, which has led to a lack of water. So all kinds of fundamental reasons why people are upset and in the streets. But when they get in the streets, they're not only clamoring for an end to the corruption. They know that billions of dollars were sent by the Barack Obama administration to Iran, and not used for them, but rather sent to dictators like Bashar al-Assad, terror groups like Hamas and Hezbollah. They know that. And so they're the ones suffering. So they begin with that kind of protest against that kind of corruption. But very quickly, and if you catch any of the videos coming out of Iran, you can see these on Twitter, on Instagram, on Telegram, different places. You'll hear their chants, or if you can understand the chants, they are clamoring for an end to the regime. Marg bar dictator, death to the dictator. That means the supreme leader, Khamenei. Or explicitly, Marg bar Khamenei, death to the supreme leader, Ali Khamenei. So there's a lot of really the kind of widespread protests been going on really since the end of last year, end of 2017. But they haven't stopped. They're not covered very well, but they haven't stopped, and they should be covered, because this is a point in time, I think, when Iran is increasingly vulnerable. And for any who believe that the Iranian people deserve their own liberty and they deserve help to stand up to the mullahs and their guns, the thugs of the IRGC, the Quds Force, the Basij, that's the street militia. Anyone who supports them, now is the time to ask your representatives in Congress, ask your representatives to talk to the President Trump, to talk to whomever they can get to talk to, and urge that the United States add our support in any way that we can to the people of Iran who deserve their freedom.
What you're talking about in these protests, and it's interesting because I talk about the Middle East and talk about Islam a lot in this show too, and the Middle East, but the people in Iran are not necessarily, they are wanting to overthrow the mullahs and the Iranian leadership, but there's a lot of desire, I believe, within these marchers to end the Islamic repression of the people, that to have a freer society where Islam is not so forced on them. We have like 1 minute left,
yes,
but is that accurate?
Yes. It's very accurate, and I really would recommend folks go to look at this article. It's written by Peter Huessy, Huessy, in The Hill. It's called Iran is Unsteady on the Inside. U.S. should squeeze from the outside. Yes, that was my point. They might be going into the streets for water and lack of jobs and income, but it very quickly turns to end this regime. We're tired of it. The women are in the street taking off their hijabs, and they're being arrested, thrown into prison, where they'll be raped and tortured, and still they're doing it. This is the time to pour on the pressure.
And speaking of a great article, I want to share with the listeners, too. This is up on my website, AmericaComingTalk.org, an article by Clare Lopez, to whom we were speaking, which was from January, but is titled, As Iranian People Rise Up for Liberty, America Must Stand With Them. You have all sorts of great ideas and sentiments in there, and I love the idea of America. We are so blessed by the liberty we have here, being the advocates for liberty for people around the world who really want just something more than a life of repression under repressive government. So, Clare, as always, it's just fabulous to talk with you. We're almost out of time. Thank you so very much for calling in tonight.
And thank you for having me.
And Clare, actually, if you're still there, the organization is Center for Security Policy. Their website is
www.centerforsecuritypolicy.org, and if you want a shorter URL, www.securefreedom.org.
Okay. Thank you, Clare, so much. And folks, thank you. You know, folks, this is a great website. I go to often to try to get the latest news relating to national security and the spread of radical Islam and the efforts within America and around the world to fight back. So, great source of information.